out of your busy schedule to join us. Hope that your summer is going well. I'd like to apologize for missing our last meeting in June. I appreciate Pdi, my co-chair, taking the lead. I do want to just mention something really interesting, and that's last June, I actually missed the meeting because my wife and I were traveling to Tennessee for the birth of a grandbaby that occurred at the same time as the UETN meeting. Then today I have a second daughter-in-law who's in the Logan Hospital right now being induced for a grandbaby. So that is 2 UETN meetings in a row that have coincided with a grandbaby being born. I just want to note that. I find that very, very interesting. I don't know what that says with the stars and how things are aligning, but it's pretty interesting. So hope again that your summer is going well. I know that we are all busy getting ready for a fall semester with classes and work and things getting going for a new academic year, and I hope that things are going well at each of your institutions and your places of work. So we're going to go ahead and get started. We do need to approve the minutes from our meeting in June. So this is the June 11th meeting. I hope that you've had an opportunity to review those minutes, and I will entertain a motion for approval.
Move to approve.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second. I can second it.
Thank you, Greg. All in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, any opposed? Thank you. The minutes stand approved. We're going to, because of a Board of Trustees meeting we have here on my campus later this morning, I'm going to need to step out at about 10:15, and Pdi is not able to join us this morning. So I have asked Steve Hess if our meeting is still going on at that point. Steve has agreed to take over and finish out the meeting. So if I slip away before the meeting's done, I apologize, but that's what is going on. Wanting to make sure that though we have a quorum for our action items, we have moved our one action item up on our agenda, and I'd like to turn some time over to Mars, who will review this action item, which is approval of some changes to the UTN vulnerability management policy. So Mars.
Thanks, Dr. Wagner. So hang on, let me just share my screen. Okay, so Laura, this is the version that you forwarded to Matt, right?
I can't tell yet, but keep going.
Oh, it's not on your screen?
It is, but we've had different versions, so I'm just not sure.
Okay, I think this is the one. So anyway, so on August 5th, we presented this revised UETN vulnerability management procedure to the Utn Advisory Council, and essentially we, as part of some other things we're doing with HIPAA security risk analysis and stuff like that have been conducted by an external entity, we decided that this particular procedure needed a bit of a refresh. It was last looked at in 2015, and the landscape's changed a little bit. We've moved on with our vulnerability scanning systems that we use, and so we decided to do a bit of an update to the procedure. And basically, for the most part, it remains the same. We changed out some wording. So this typically read UTN previously. So it's been updated to reflect, the change in that we're using UETN with everything that we do. So The other thing that we changed here in the definitions specifically is this section here, which deals with how vulnerabilities are rated. So as you can see here, they're rated on a scale starting at info, low, medium, high, and critical. The previous system that we were using for conducting our vulnerability scans used a scale of 1 through 5, 5 being the equivalent to a critical. And that's specifically what we're focused here on this vulnerability management procedure, because we do scan for all vulnerabilities, but we focus on the critical ones. And so we've updated that language to reflect that change. Moving down to the actual communication plan, essentially it remains the same, except that we had deleted a section in the communication plan that basically said that we were communicating with a customer on a monthly basis, giving them a summary of all of their existing vulnerabilities. We stopped doing that some time ago simply because there wasn't a lot of benefit since the customers are being communicated to on a weekly basis. You know, it was a lot of duplication, so we stopped doing that. And what we have introduced is this section just here, where we are planning to host a weekly office hours. And the reason for this is that, you know, these vulnerabilities come up on a weekly basis. They're addressed continuously by, you know, both our internal technical staff and the technical staff that support each one of our customers. And typically, what's happened in the past is that, you know, when they have an issue trying to resolve a vulnerability, they will reach out to one of our security engineers, and it just becomes taxing on the amount of time that each one of these security engineers has to deal with each of these customers. So we've decided to schedule this weekly office hours where we'll basically have like an open WebEx forum for an hour on a Wednesday. And one or more of the security engineers will be inside the forum waiting for people to join. If anyone has an issue, they can join the forum. You know, they can discuss the issue, and the engineer can help resolve it. It becomes a bit of a teaching moment for anyone else that's on there, because a lot of these vulnerabilities are fairly consistent across organizations. And so if the engineer is showing one particular customer how to deal with a vulnerability on a printer, and there are other people watching at the same time, you know, they tend to address the same issue across multiple sites at the same time. So it saves us some time and effort. The rest of the document is has not changed. So our sanctions haven't changed; they remain the same, and that is basically it. And so we just wanted to. This was approved at least at a council level, and, you know, forwarded to the board for your approval. And that's the summary. If anyone has any questions, I can certainly address them, but we're looking for this to be approved.
Great. And Mars, just to note, the UTN Advisory Council did review and approve this and recommend this to the board at their meeting on August 5th.
Yes, they did.
Yeah.
Mars, I have a question. This is more of just clarity in my understanding. When it says in the definition they're connected to all systems throughout its network, does that mean everywhere up and down the state, Utah State, here at Davis Tech? Is that all systems that you're checking vulnerabilities for?
No, Greg, these are specifically our healthcare related customers. This is not UETN in general. The vulnerability scan is done with our healthcare related customers. We actually, because we provide managed security services for every single customer, as part of that managed security services offering, we do scan their networks on a weekly basis, but it's specifically healthcare.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Sure.
Any other questions for the Mars? Okay, this is an action item, so we will entertain a motion to approve this new the rewrite of this policy.
So moved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Thank you, Scott. Any discussion, further discussion?
Just thanks for your good work on that, Mars and team. It's a ongoing and escalating concern.
Yep, it is. Thanks, Ted.
Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. And any opposed? Okay, the action passes. Thank you very much. I am going to do, Laura, I hope it's okay. I am going to make one change as we move into the discussion portion, and that's just because I do want to just mention the board retreat. So before we do our training this morning, we typically, if you're new to the board, we typically have a strategic board retreat annually. It's a chance for us to get together in person. And the last couple of years that has been held on the University of Utah campus or in close proximity. They've been great meetings. The staff does a fantastic job. The board has an opportunity to weigh in on things that we would like to discuss or presentations that we would like to have. They've been very worthwhile meetings, as well as an opportunity to just meet face to face and be in person as a board, which is great. Of course, because of COVID last year, we were not able to do, because we weren't able to do face-to-face, we chose not to do a strategic planning retreat. Rather than doing a very, very long remote meeting, we thought that we would just put it off a year and hope that we could schedule one for 2021. We weren't able to schedule an in-person event during the summertime because of some institutional policies. So we had tentatively set an in-person board retreat for our next meeting, which would be on October 8th. As you're all aware, things with COVID don't seem to be slowing down any, and I'm not quite sure what institutional policies we'll be faced with come October 8th. I would like to propose, and this is meant to be a discussion, I'd like to propose that we continue to hold on scheduling a retreat until we can do one in person. But I would love to get the thoughts from members of the board. What do you think is it worth? So I guess my question is, if we set the date as October 8th and we end up not being able to meet in person, do we go ahead with the retreat and do it remotely, or do we not do a retreat unless we can meet in person? Any thoughts from the board?
And Robert, it's Laura. Just to clarify, October 8th would be the time of the board's usual business meeting. So if in lieu of a retreat, we would still have business to take care of for a couple of hours that morning.
Great, thanks.
Well, unless there's something that is really pressing, I would agree with that the in-person is probably preferable, and I, just from what we're seeing at the university hospitals and clinics, I think we're in for a rough ride for the next couple of months, 2 or 3 months. And then hopefully things settle after that a bit, unless the other variants get legs, and if that happens, then it's going to be a much more protracted battle. So, you know, it may mean delaying until after the first of the year, but my preference would be to do it in person, unless delaying it a couple months is not possible.
I am not aware of anything pressing for a strategic board retreat. Again, it would just be an opportunity to meet, to decide beforehand the topics that we have. So thank you, Ted. I again, I really don't think there's anything saying we need to do a board retreat in October. It can be pushed back if the board would like to do that and would like to do it in person. Other thoughts or preferences?
No, that sounds fine to me.
I would agree with that. If there's not something pressing, let's not risk things.
So why don't we do this? Why don't we begin working on topics for a strategic board retreat? So Laura, I would invite the team and I can work with you all over the next several weeks. We can begin electronically gathering information from members of the board of ideas or topics that you would have, and we can begin preparing. We can tentatively, I'm almost feeling like we don't even schedule an all-day retreat on October 8th. I think the chances of being able to do something in person in October, as Tad had described with what conditions may be. I want to be sensitive to all of your calendars, and blocking out a whole day, and for some of you, even travel, and then switching at the last minute and just doing a regular 2-hour meeting. So I wonder if we just ought to postpone the strategic retreat, do a regular meeting in October, but we will start reaching out to members of the board electronically and gathering topics and information that you would like to discuss. So when the time does come for us to have an all-day in-person retreat, we will be ready to go. How does that sound?
Sounds good.
Thumbs up. Okay. Laura, does that sound good? Is that doable?
That's great. Yes. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. I really can't wait to get us all in person. I have really enjoyed the retreats in the past. I think it would be a great opportunity for us as a board to be able to be together and create more unity as a board and get to know each other. They're also. So I push off that strategic retreat very reluctantly, because I was hoping that we would be able to do that this fall. We are now going to move on as our next item for discussion is we have our annual diversity training. We appreciate Dr. Jennifer Robinson, Associate Director of the Kempsey Gardner Policy Institute at the University of Utah, who will be providing this annual training for board members. So Dr. Robinson, please.
Thank you so much, Robert. My pleasure to join you today. I'm going to share my screen. Thumbs up, you can see it for me. Thanks, Laura and others. It helps to know that you can see the slides that are up here. Really a pleasure to join you. I'm Jenny Robinson with the Gardner Policy Institute. We're part of the David Eccles School of Business at the University of Utah. Earlier this year, we released a data book that looks at diversity in our state, and we've had an opportunity to share this with a number of groups, business leaders, elected officials, county and city administrations. And it's nice to be able to join you as well today. I want to tell you a little bit about the diversity book and what it contains. And then I thought I'd go through a few slides with you and show you some things about our state in terms of demographics, the economy, our healthcare, education system, and housing, some of the most important issues in our state right now, and how these are affected by race, ethnicity, and by sex, men and women in our state. Just to start, I wanted to share a few key points with you. This data book and this research was requested by business and community leaders in our state, and it was funded by Zions Bank. I think that's really important for people to know where it originated. The scope of all the research in here is around race and ethnicity in our state and sex. Again, we focus on demographics, education, economics, health, and housing. And really what you're going to see today is that there are real significant disparities between racial and ethnic groups and between men and women across our state. And for those of you, I guess this won't be surprising for those of you on this call, but the data are very complex. They're impacted by a wide variety of factors. And most importantly, there is no causality assigned in any of our data that we present today. So please just keep that in mind as we go through things. And the last thing I want to mention is that there are some incredible factors in our state that I think position us to make a lot of progress on these differences and these disparities. Some of those are the leadership priorities in our state from the governor, the legislator, and business leaders in our state and others, the high social capital that we have in our state, family stability, income equality, and social mobility that exist in our state. So even though we see a lot of disparities, I think at the Gardner Institute, we also have a lot of hope for improvement along these lines. Just to begin, I think it's really helpful to just start with some demographics in our state. So let me share this slide. This is the population by race and ethnicity. And this is from 2015 to 2019. It's using Census Bureau data. According to this data, about 78% of our state's population is white, about 14% Hispanic. And then you can see the other races. Yesterday, the Census Bureau released some new data. I don't know if anybody saw it, but the big story is that we've become even more diverse in the last few years. According to the 2020 census, about 75% of our population is white, not 78, and about 25% of our population identify as minority. So that's an exciting change. A lot of people ask, how does our state compare to other states? We will often hear things about Utah being the least diverse state in the country. I don't know if others have heard that kind of statement, but it's actually not quite true. Let me show you this quick graph. In our state, we're ranked as the 34th most racially and ethnically diverse state in the nation. That includes Washington, D.C. I'm going to blow that up a little bit so you can see where we rank. We are more diverse than states like Ohio and Indiana. I think that's quite interesting. And then you can also see some of the communities in our state that have really high minority populations. San Juan County in the corner of our Four Corners area of our state with the Navajo Reservation. West Valley City has about 54% of their population identifying as minority. Ogden, Salt Lake City, and then we have Salt Lake County with about 30%. As I go along today, please feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to clarify anything that would be helpful to you guys. I also think it's helpful to know how our population is changing or has changed and what we project to see. We have about almost 3.3 million Utahns living in our state. About 22%, according to the 2019 data of our state identified as minority. We project by 2060, about 35% of our state will identify as minority. And you can see here, we also have the trend line for the United States. About 40% of our population was identifying as minority, and we project about 56% of the US population will identify as minority by 2060. Really, really important numbers. And you can see how that has changed over the last century and a half. I mentioned earlier that the data is really quite complex, and I just wanted to give you a preview of that before we dive into the data around economics and healthcare, education, and housing, and give you a sense of why context matters. Most of us are associated with a system of higher education in our state, and this is really fascinating data. This is going to show you the differences between men and women in our state with a bachelor's degree or a higher degree that are over the age of 25. And here you can see in our state, about 37% of men have a bachelor's degree or higher, and about 33% of women have a bachelor's degree or higher. But if we break that data down by age, you're going to see some really important differences that I think you all will find fascinating. In this graphic, you can see that our population from 18 to 24 and the age group of 25 to 34, we actually have a lot more women with bachelor's degrees than men in our state. So just take a peek right here, and I'll hold the slide steady for everybody. But about 11% of women in that 18 to 24-year-old age range have a bachelor's degree or higher, compared to just about 3.5% of men. And then 24 to 34, you can see again some differences. And then we see sort of a switch, right? Where more men have bachelor's degrees than women as we get older. Certainly in my mom's age group, the 65 and older, only you see that disparity that's quite significant between men and women. Only about 25% of women have a bachelor's degree in that age group, compared to about 40% of men. This is just trying to explain and highlight how complex data is, that you might get a simple graph like this that shows some disparities, but then when you dive into the data, you can get a much better and deeper, fuller understanding of the data. Laura, I'm going to spend some time and just talk about the economics, what we're seeing in our state and some of the disparities we see between racial groups and between men and women as well. And then we'll go into some of the other areas. Want to start with our population that's experiencing poverty. And just a quick reminder, and maybe some new information for those of you that don't know, but for a family of four, poverty means that their income, their family income, is $26,200 or lower. Pretty low income. We have about 9% of our state's population that live in poverty. And you can see some slight disparities here between men and women, but then you see some more significant disparities. About 27% of our American Indian and Alaska Native population live in poverty. About 27% of our Black African American population in our state live in poverty. And then if you work your way, you can see all the other racial and ethnic groups. We also put in confidence intervals here. For those of you that are interested, about 90% confidence level on the data here. And you can see those, we call them little whiskers, but you can see those orange whiskers to tell you what that range, that level would be. I also want to share with you some household income data that we show by gender and, just by race here. We have three different groups here. The household group, so you could think that that could be a home with a grandparent, other family members living together. The gray, the dark gray is just a family, so mom, dad, kids. And then the light gray is a non-family. So you could think of that as roommates living together, would be an example. And you can see the total population, our household income in our state's about 71,000. And then you can start to see the disparities when we break that down by racial groups, with some lower incomes again for Alaskan Natives, American Indians, and Black and African Americans in our state. And then here's the white population at the bottom. Just a quick reminder, the racial ethnic groups are identified by the US Census Bureau, and people self-identify. for these groups. Okay, let's see. We're going to move to education data. I think most will be really interested in some of these data points that we have this morning. We want to share achievement levels by race and ethnicity. And this is really K through 12 data that I'm going to show first. We're going to start with third grade literacy, and you can see the differences here between American Indians, African Americans, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, Asian, and white populations. We also have the English language arts proficiency data, mathematics proficiency data, scoring above or equal to an 18 on the ACT, and then our high school graduation rates. And you can see some significant disparities here between the American Indian, Black, Hispanic, and Pacific Islander populations, and then the higher levels for the Asian and white populations across all 4 of these indicators right here. And again, you can see some of that disparity that exists in the high school graduation rates for our K through 12 students in our state. I'll take a pause and let you review that, and happy to answer any questions, Laura, that pop up. And then I think we're going to move and talk a little bit more about our higher education system too. This is our educational attainment, and we have two little factors here that we're looking at. In the red, we have the bachelor's degree or higher. In the gray, we have a high school graduate degree or higher. And for our state, about 92% of our population has a high school degree, which is terrific, about 34% a bachelor's degree. You can see real high numbers for most of our population up here, but then we see some disparities that start to exist, especially in our Alaskan Native and American Indian populations, and our Hispanic Latino populations, with about 80 and 71% of those populations respectively having a high school degree or higher. And you can again see the disparities that exist when we start talking about higher education between these populations. Doing very well in our state, the white population and the Asian population. About 50% of our Asian population has a bachelor's degree or higher, and about 37% of our white population. But some very low numbers for other groups in our state. The Black population has about 24% with a bachelor's degree, American Indian, Alaskan Native, 12%, Hispanic Latino at about 14.5%, having a bachelor's degree or higher. Fascinating data, and I'll just quickly mention there's a lot more data around education and the other indicators in the data book. I think, Laura, your team sent it out to everybody, but if you need a copy or want to share it, it's also available at our Gardner Institute website. Quickly, I want to spend a minute here on some of the healthcare data that we have. We have an incredible person on our team, Laura Summers, who is our senior healthcare analyst, and she pulled some very important data around some of the disparities, and I'm just going to share 2 of them with you this morning. One is about life expectancy, and we're breaking it down by race, ethnicity, and also between men and women. So the U.S. average life expectancy is about almost 79 years of age, and the Utah average is just a slightly higher, almost at about 80 years of age. You can see a really interesting difference between men and women in our state. Gosh, about a 3.5-year difference in life expectancy. Women with about 82 years expected, and men at about 78.5 years of life expectancy. And you can see some disparities again, some differences here between our populations. The non-Hispanic population, Hispanic. In this case, the data is broken out a little bit differently than the Census Bureau data. So we have just a white group, the Pacific Islander population with lower than our state average, the Black population with lower than the state average, and then the Asian population quite a bit higher than the state average with 87 years of life expectancy there, and then a lower than state average just a bit at 78%. And again, we provide the confidence level here. We're at 95% for those that are interested, and you can see those little orange whiskers on all the data. Infant mortality is also a really interesting indicator, and I wanted to share that with you. This is the deaths for children under 1 year of age per 1,000 live births. The data comes to us from the Utah Department of Health, and we're at a 95% confidence level again. You can see that the confidence levels on these whiskers are quite large and extensive. So just keep that in mind, but just want to share a few things with you about how there are some differences in possible death rates here for our infants and some of the disparities between our populations. And then lastly, I want to spend a moment talking about the adults who identify having depression. This is from the BRFSS survey that the Utah Department of Health does. Here's our US average of number of percent of adults who identify as having depression at some point, 19%. The Utah average a bit higher than that at 23%. Pretty big disparity between men and women in our state as saying they've had depression. And then you can see some of the differences here between the racial and ethnic groups in our state as well. I'll just pause there and let you guys take that in for a moment. You can see how low the Asian population is, and you can compare that quickly with, say, the American Indian, Alaskan Native population of those identifying with depression. Boy, housing is the next issue, and if this isn't the issue of the day in our state, if anybody's tried to buy a home and you've seen and dealt with the rising house prices or even the availability, it's quite stunning in our state, and our housing experts think that's going to continue. But we want to show you a few interesting data points about where people live by race and ethnicity. So I'll just describe what you can see here in this graph. The gray is people who live in their homes that they own, and the red is people living in a rented home, condo, apartment, whatever it might be. In our state, about 70% of Utahns live in owner-occupied homes, and about 30% of Utahns are renting right now. A little bit higher for our white population. But as you work your way down the graph, and I'm going to go all the way to the bottom where we're looking at the Black and African American population, about 29% of Blacks and African Americans in our state live in owner-occupied homes, and about 71% live in renter-occupied. Again, can't provide causality here, but just showing some of the disparities exist and allowing people to have some data to better understand what's going on and maybe seek other information, more depth as they can. And then I want to also show you, this is the share of renters, people by race and ethnicity that pay at least 50% of their income for housing. That's considered being severely cost burdened when you pay 50% of your income for your housing. In our state, about 19% of people, Utahns, pay 50% of their income for housing if they're a renter, close to that for whites. But if you look again for our Black population in our state, about 32% are paying at least 50% of their income for their rental. I think it's really interesting data, and it just highlights some additional disparities in our state. I mentioned that I think Utah has a lot of factors, a lot of strengths to build upon to address some of these disparities. I just wanted to quickly share a few of those with everybody this morning. The first is social capital, and this is some data that comes from the Joint Economic Committee in Congress. It's based on 32 measures looking at support, cooperation, networks of trust, goodwill, fellowship, the depth of civic virtue. And the higher the number, the better. And you can see Utah stands out here. It just means we have a lot of cohesiveness, ability to address issues in our state. And our social capital number, according to Congress, is a little bit above a 2. Really, really important, along with other factors. Income equality, this is on a scale of 0 to 1. 1 means you have a lot of equality incomes spread out across your state in an equal way versus a one where it's highly concentrated. And Utah does the best across the country. These are the top 10 states with income equality. And then family stability is another factor we think helps. This is the percent of children who live in single parent families. Low number here in our state, about 19% of kids live in single parent families. So, and then the last one is about economic mobility. This is really interesting. This is Ray Chetty out of Harvard, looking at what cities, communities have the most ability to move one generation into a higher income level. And for Salt Lake City, we're the top in the nation, identified by Chetty's work, for the ability to move one generation up. Fascinating data. It just speaks highly to the ability to be successful in our state, financially successful. So Laura, that is a quick overview of the data book. There is so much more that's available in that data book. I'm going to stop sharing real quick. But so much more that's available in that data book for people to dive into. And my team, we'd be happy to answer questions or present to another group if it's helpful to anybody.
Thank you so much, Dr. Robinson. And I just wanted to let board members know the data book and a brief version of the data book are both linked in the board materials for this meeting. As a reminder, you all as a board have a diversity policy that you vote and reaffirm annually. And part of that diversity policy is a commitment to continued education about diversity, ethnicity, and inclusion in our state. And I think having information about who we serve, since we're charged with serving everyone in the state and understanding the people that we serve, is really valuable information. So Dr. Robinson, thank you so much for your time. I'll turn it over to you, Robert. I'm not sure if anyone has any other questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Dr. Robinson, and the timing of this with the census data that just came out. It's fascinating to look and see the changes that are occurring in our state. And Laura, I agree. It's really important that UETN as an organization that we're aware of these changes and that we address them. So thank you. Are there any questions for Dr. Robinson? Well, wonderful. Thank you again for taking the time and for providing the links in our notes as well.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to join you, and best of luck on the remainder of your day and your board meeting.
Great. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
We will move on to our next discussion item. That is federal broadband program updates, and I believe Kelly will be leading this discussion.
Thank you. Yeah, I will be starting the discussion, and Jerome Browning is actually just jumping on right now. So I'm going to address one part of it, and then when he jumps on, he will address the other part of it. So, and actually it looks like he's on. So the part that I wanted to address, and I just wanted to make everybody aware, and actually it ties in really well with what we just discussed with, some of the upward mobility and tools and where people are with their economic situation. And one of the things that has really been difficult over the years is to address the digital divide, particularly, in our scope for students, and ensuring that they're able to have access to internet in their homes. And, as you know, we've done such a great job of getting access out to all of the schools and the libraries and healthcare facilities, but that piece of getting it into the homes has always been a struggle. But there are two programs right now that are addressing those needs on a temporary basis right now. I hope that these programs begin to have more of a permanent role in our strategy to move forward. And hopefully, if we see good numbers for some of these programs, there'll be continuation of them. So the one that I'm going to talk about very briefly is the emergency broadband benefit. So right now, the FCC has released a program where low-income houses can actually get a $50 discount on their internet service, which is huge. That's the biggest that we've ever seen. There's the Lifeline program that typically is somewhere between $10 and $20, depending on the state's portion and the federal portion. And this program, to give $50 to homes so that they can apply for services with their providers, is a big deal. So we have internally been working a lot with Rich Finlinson, with Katie Garrett, to publicize this opportunity so that families are able to know that they can sign on. And if you have areas where you think we should distribute materials to, we've sent materials out to all the libraries. We've done a lot of social media on our accounts. But if there are any other venues that you think that we should publicize to, if you want to let me or Katie or Rich or Jerome know about those opportunities, we can get the word out. But that's a really big deal. And then I'm going to turn it over to Jerome because he's going to talk a little bit about an opportunity that the school districts actually can apply for. And he is actively working with them because the window on that actually closes today. So he is going to talk about that. But just wanted to let you know that there are some really great opportunities, and we want to make sure that they're being utilized so that families can get access, especially going into the new school year right now. Jerome?
Good morning, everyone. I have a PowerPoint, if I might share. Is that possible? Give it a shot. Let's go. You should be seeing my PowerPoint. Right. So again, thank you, Kelly. The Emergency Connectivity Fund is one of those opportunities and one of the things that I've been working hard in the last month or so, or actually in the last year, to get that started and going. So I want to run through a quick slide show right quick, if you don't mind, is what is the Emergency Connectivity Funding? What steps are we taking to support Utah ECF applicants? And then I'll give you a quick status of the Utah applicants that have filed an ECF applications as of today. And as Kelly said, the deadline is today, and I am being bombarded with questions, and I'm also working on another application ourselves, but I'll get to that in just a second. Emergency Connectivity Funding was part of the American Rescue Plan 2021 that was signed into law in March the 11th, 2021. It set aside $7.17 billion nationwide for off-campus equipment and services to support internet access for remote learning needs and to close that homework gap. Schools and libraries schools and libraries are eligible if they are eligible to participate in the E-rate. So then the FCC put out their report in order to basically set up the rules and the process of filing for the application process, and they just done that in May. Some things that's kind of new, and need to remind everyone, emergency connectivity funding is being run through the similar program that E-rate is run through, but it is not E-rate. So it's totally two different programs. Reason being is under ECF, excuse me for the acronyms, but emergency connectivity funding, Wi-Fi hotspots, not cell phones, modems, routers, devices that combine modem routers, air cards, and actually connected devices in terms of being laptops or tablets are eligible. And commercially available fixed or mobile broadband internet accesses are available as well. This is all available to the students when they leave the school grounds. And that is something new and very exciting for a lot of our school districts and libraries. It's based on the premise of an unmet need. In other words, if not for ECF funding, the student would not have a connected device or would not have internet access. So those are the needs that the ECF is meaning to meet. It is not a normal quote unquote E-rate, because in E-rate you get either a anywhere from 20 to 85% or 90% discount In the ECF program, it's 100% discount. So that's something different as well. But it is highly dependent upon those unmet needs as determined by the schools and the libraries throughout the state. Teachers, students, and library patrons are eligible. Again, it's not E-rate. So what we've done to support the school districts and libraries is I started sending out emails as early as March 16th, 2021, and I continue to bombard our constituents, our applicants, our participants with emails and giving them updates and giving them training tips. Provided several dedicated Zoom training sessions for them dedicated to ECF, made recordings available and so on. I directed them to the SCC and USAC events and training events as well. And of course, I've had tons of individual consults in helping them file their ECF applications. I have what I call open office hours, and I have dedicated at least 36 hours to help them file for their applications. We actually providing a ECF consortia application for those. We started out providing it for those small school districts and libraries who may not have the staff to actually file a ECF Form 471 process. So we provided the option to participate in an ECF consortia application. A lot of the schools opted to do it on their own, and I'm happy for that. But we do have about 10 libraries that are participating in a consortia application that I am working on today. So it's all to be done by 9:59 p.m. tonight. So I got a little time. There we go, deadline today. And I don't know why they put it on Friday 13th, but it is on Friday 13th. Right. So the current status, so you will know, and I'm kind of excited about this, is there are at least 36 ECF applications listed in the program from Utah. 21 of those are complete and certified. And when I added up the number, the amount of requests we've made so far in the state of Utah, I see that it is $32.8 million. So we are actively working on that. And these are just the complete, the data on the certified ones that are in place as of this morning. There are 17 different public schools that have applied, 4 other charters and independent schools. I do not have the library data because I'm not listed as the library coordinator. I will get that fixed at some point in time. But anyway, that's where we are today on ECF. Are there any questions or did I go too fast?
Okay. Well, thank you.
Laura.
Oh, Jerome, just a quick question. Out of the 17 applicants that you mentioned, do you have a sense if they're rural, urban, or spread out throughout the state?
Well, I did make one notation this morning as but we have 3 large school districts that will be Davis, Granite, and Alpine, and then all the way down to Millard. So we do have a wide, and we have Duchesne, and I'm sorry, I'm still learning names. I'm from Alabama, so we pronounce things a little differently than y'all do. But we have Weber, and those are several of them. And I have a full list if you want me to send it. I can pull that up and show that to you. But yeah, it's a broad range of economically and rural versus urban. So I'm kind of excited about it. I was worried about it to begin with, but I'm happy that they're jumping in there, and they know I'm there to help them. So, anything else?
So why would some districts not participate?
Why would some school districts not participate? Yeah, that's a good question. There's a lot of unknowns about the ECF program that, the E-rate program in USAC has been are known to be strict, okay? Because you got to make sure you follow your rules and you cross your T's and you dot your I's and everything. And the sudden impact, in other words, this was a program that's just been thrown upon us like within the last couple of months, and all the rules that comes in place. And like I said earlier, it's all dependent on that unmet need. And the data are the data that the schools may have had over the past couple of years due to the COVID. It's kind of sketchy, and they're not necessarily detailed and valid. But that's one of the things that has scared a lot of the school districts from doing it. It's just the application process. So that's why I'm trying to help them as much as I can to get them through that application process. I will actually be available to them. I made myself available to them almost 24/7, but I am available to them on Zoom to help them all the way until 9:59 tonight if they do decide to join in and apply. I do have about 3 districts or 3 schools I know of an email that said they're going to apply today, and I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. So, this is the last day.
Steve, I think the other reason is to be eligible, the school has or library has to certify that commercially available internet is not available to the residents in their area.
Mhm.
So
They don't need to do, Laura, they don't need to do that they only need to do that if they're doing their own networking. So if they do CBRS or data casting, but otherwise they can have providers there. It was just for certain services that they limited it.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is correct.
Jerome, we appreciate your work.
This is Rick.
Hey, Rick.
Just a kudos to both Jerome and to Kelly and their support. I was on a call with several districts the other day, and one district that I think had completed their application. Another one was waffling on whether they were going to do it or not, and they just simply said, "Well, just give Jerome a call. He'll walk you right through the process. So just do it."
Michael Shuping and Lisa have been also kind of
there's been really good support out there.
Yeah, but Jerome has been doing some really heavy lifting on this for sure.
So I just want to thank the whole staff. It's not, the application didn't need to be the burden because there's been plenty of help from UEN to help lift that burden.
Thank you, Rick. Anything else? And now that the windows are going in for the ECF, the other program begins. I mean, of course, it always begins. E-rate program is always in place.
Well, thank you, Kelly, and thank you, Jerome. Appreciate that in that discussion. We will move on to 3.4, a funding request discussion and raise absence. I think that Lisa, you were going to lead this discussion.
I'm going to go ahead and start it. Yes. And so people know regarding last year's funding request, the one thing we weren't funded for was for growth in operations, our ongoing cost of about $465,000 of ongoing, and our one time of $643,000. Anyway, so for this year's funding, our funding request, we generally create a one-pager. And our number one request on the one pager will be for the what we call growth in operations, and we'll pick up what was not funded in fiscal year 22, and we'll also pick up the request for fiscal year 23. We're looking to go ahead and pick up additional software costs due to growth and cost increase in the licensing, and also just our equipment replacement. So that would be our foundation of the what I call the one sheet of the sheet that you all are accustomed to seeing. At this point in time, we don't have it completed at this point, and it's what has thrown us off a little bit is and I think you all are familiar with what they call ARPA funds, which some of us might call CARES Round 2, but it's ARPA funds. We had submitted applications 3 applications about 5 months ago, and we did not receive funding at that point in time. Most of those funds are being carried over and will be awarded during the next legislative session, during the fiscal, in January, February 2023 is what we're thinking, what will happen. And we are trying to pull a complete request together. And I just received notification actually about 2 days ago that the governor's office is doing a round, what they call a second round of ARPA requests, and we need to have them submitted by the 24th of September. And then they go through that. We can have the ARPA request on our state funding request. We can do a split between state and ARPA. So we're pulling that together at this point in time. So that's what we're working on right now. And what our goal would be is we need to have it completed. I need to have it submitted by the 24th of September. That's my drop dead date. So what our goal is to go ahead. We wanted to go ahead and have probably during the week group. I was working with Laura in the week of the 13th of September. That week, we felt like we would have received enough information on the ARPA, how we're supposed on the ARPA funding, possibly the infrastructure bill, whether that affects us too, and what our ongoing request will be. And we wanted to, at that point in time, to have a 30-minute meeting with the board at that point in time to present what we're looking at. It gives us time, it gives me time to make changes based upon your input. And so Ray and I chatted, and Laura, and what we'd like to do then is go ahead and just do a doodle poll. Sometime it'll be coming up next week for a time that everyone could meet for 30 minutes. And we're looking at the week of September 13th sometime. And at that point in time, we would finalize what our request would be that we're going to be submitting, taking into effect we have the ARPA funds, state funds, and then possibly we'll have some guidance on if there's how the infrastructure bill will affect us too. So we're kind of, that's what we're doing at this point in time. Do you have any questions, suggestions?
Do you have, Lisa, with the ARPA funds, those of course are one time. So do you have an idea of where you would want to plug those funds into since they aren't on?
We do, and actually I'm working with Kelly on that. What I've asked everyone to do is, since we originally had our request for ARPA dollars, and when we did the original request, we had it broken down to broadband infrastructure, broadband access, and then tools and training is how we broke it down with one-time request. I'm asking everyone, and we've just sent it back out since we received the new application process, trying to understand what they want. And we're going to actually ask all the people where I received through technical services in the infrastructure team to provide me a more of a detailed plan. What funds do they want with one-time dollars? And you're right, it is one-time dollars. The one thing is these ARPA funds can be spent over a 4-year period. And that's why the state has been a little bit slower on releasing these funds, because it has a longer period of time that it can be spent on. But we are pulling that together. So we will have that to present an actual plan. A little bit, I need to have a more detailed plan on how we're going to spend the funds. And so we're looking at that. And some of the key areas we were looking at were to provide an uplift for the backbone. So it would be, for example, the 400 gig backbone in certain areas. But we're working with technical services, a more detailed plan so they understand what our costs are associated with the one-time cost, because you're right, it's one-time dollars, not ongoing dollars. So that's what we're looking at doing. And so we would hope to have it presented and broken down the way we think will be most successful to you all. And we feel like we need probably 4 more weeks to pull it together.
So we will be looking for that doodle poll then. If I could ask members of the board to be looking for that, and please, if you could make yourself available, that'll be a quick turnaround time. It sounds like up against that deadline. So please look for that, and let's see if we can get a third 60-minute board meeting together that week.
Correct. Thank you.
And
And it will include, you talked UTN, it includes everybody on that point that, you know, it will include the whole gamut. So
So the schools can be involved, the university colleges and the schools can be involved in this process, right?
if that's what we want to, you know what I mean, that on our first request, we had some of the requests. Yeah, I'm not sure what the request is going to be, but we.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting too. I'd be a little careful in assuming that we can spend the money for 4 years. The legislature, I'm aware of some funds that have gone to higher ed where the legislature has imposed their own deadline of when the funds need to be spent by. So I think we need to be aware that although ARPA says within 4, our state legislature might draw those deadline shorter. So we should take that into account also.
I agree.
Other questions about the funding request, or sounds like we will talk more in September, of course.
Yeah, whatever time you need to talk about this, well, it's important. It's a one in a lifetime opportunity, so we appreciate that. But I have full confidence in Lisa and the group that they'll put something together well.
And we'll probably send out working drafts before, you'll have drafts before that. So it won't be just so you can see what we're looking at. And I think I'd like to get some input, you know, in about 2 weeks or something. Are we on target? You know, it just so you can get a feel of what we're thinking of too. I think you'll see some updates on that too.
I think the priorities are spot on as well. I think you're following the right ones.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, we will go. Thank you very much, Lisa, and to your team for the excellent work there. We will go on to our next discussion topic, 3.5, which is software update. Laura, I believe, is going to lead this discussion.
Yes, and this is a little bit of a teaser having to do with software. So we had planned to do a bigger demonstration of the data at our October meeting. So hopefully you're seeing a slide that talks about the Canvas learning management system. Is that correct? Okay, great. So we have been looking at the data and how it changed during the last school year, which, as you all know, is incredibly unusual. And I thought that this would be interesting for you to see. So on the left side is Canvas usage for K-12. So the blue line is 2020 and the purple line is 2021. So you can see significant growth in the use of Canvas, and then it's sustained from 2020 to 2021. Interesting, on higher ed on the right side of the screen, the usage has been pretty consistent. So there's a little bit more that happened during the pandemic year, but higher ed has always used Canvas and continues to use Canvas quite extensively. So I thought that was an interesting comparison. And then we're looking at a lot more data, and we'll be able to share it at the October meeting.
Yay, great teaser. Our next discussion item, it looks like it's just information only. Congratulations to the UEN Advisory Council, to UEN Advisory Council member Tom Cheatham, co-PI for a recent NSF award to improve research computing data challenges. And there's a link on our agenda. Laura, is there any member of the team that wanted to speak about this?
Oh, Tom spoke at the advisory council meeting and described the effort and the importance of having the research community come together on this. So you can see the description in the link that's in the materials, but we're happy for him. That's not a small thing.
Let me just speak to it a little. Tom is outstanding in what he does in research computing. He's well known around the country, and he pulled this together with his colleagues and put together a paper of what we can really act on and what we can do to improve research computing. So hats off to him, and we're very supportive of what he's doing.
Great, that's fantastic news. We will, anything else there? Okay. We will go on to reports now, and Laura, I think you'll be given the executive director's report. And I'm just going to mention here, Steve, I appreciate you picking up the baton. I will probably step out here in about 5 minutes, so it could be while Laura is presenting. So Steve, thank you very much.
All right, be happy to do that. Thank you, Robert.
And once again, Ray apologizes that he's not able to join us, but submitted this report for you all. And I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Before the pandemic time, he was doing a market analysis on a lot of the executive level positions, and that was put on hold for a bit, but thankfully was able to be to pick up. And he wanted you to know there have been some changes with the titles for some of the executive level team that you can see there on his report, and really just looking at the type of activities that this leadership team have been doing. And he felt that this, and the university felt that this was much more in line with the responsibilities that this group has taken on. So it's good news. He wanted you all to be aware of. And then the other part is we're tracking, as you heard from Lisa, the infrastructure bill that's moving through Congress. There is quite a bit for broadband, and we're looking at what our relationship would be to those funds and what might be available. Ray's working closely with the Shelby Group on that. And then the ARPA funding, the American Rescue Plan Act, Lisa already mentioned that, so we're following that. We did receive some ARPA funding from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting.
Laura,
Yes.
Laura, it may just be me, but your audio was going in and out there.
Oh, I apologize. Well, I think the rest of the report is pretty self-explanatory, so I'll stop and see if there's any questions. And probably just a congratulations to Kelly and others on the team that have received that higher designation in their employment. It's well deserved, and Rich and Michael.
Okay, thank you, Lauren. Please express our best wishes to Ray as well, please. We will move on to our advisory council reports now. We'll start with you with the UTN Advisory Council. Mars, please.
Thanks, Robert. Okay, so the Advisory Council met on August 5th. We had some representatives from the Utah Department of Health provide an overview of their BRFSS survey, which they've conducted. And there was more discussion regarding potential questions that UTN would like to add to the next survey, specifically as it relates to telehealth and internet access in the home. The council also reviewed the revised vulnerability management procedure, which we covered earlier. There was some discussion around the upcoming annual retreat on October 7th, and a decision was made to keep it virtual this year for all the same reasons that you discussed earlier with the board retreat. Zoe Robbins, the chair, led an open discussion focused on the council's priorities. And finally, we did an update regarding our NRTRC program. And that's it.
Okay, very good. I think let's move on then to the next report. Any questions on Mars's report at all? Okay, we appreciate the work of that UTN Advisory Council. Okay, let's go to the Advisory Council and Rick Gaisford.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate that. Good to be with you all today. We met last week. One of our first items was our board membership follows more of the fiscal calendar from July through June. So we had a number of new board members. It was also time for us to, as an advisory council, to select a chair and a vice chair. I was selected to be the chair again, so I guess you're stuck with me for another term. And Leslie Baker from the academic libraries, representing academic libraries from Utah Valley University, was selected to be the vice chair, and she'll start joining us in these meetings in the future as well. That was our main business item, and then we did have a number of interesting reports. We received a report from UEN on their back to school campaign for K-12. This is just a campaign that we've done for years to really help highlight good resources as teachers are ramping up for the new year, to make sure teachers are aware of all of the great things that UEN can provide them. And the tools and the resources that are there. And so they gave a great presentation on that. And then we also had a great presentation on the Native American Film Festival, which was very interesting. So those were the main parts of what that we talked about. And it's the council had good attendance, and we look forward to working with the board through the upcoming year.
Well, Rick, thank you for taking another turn at the chair. We appreciate that. We know you'll do a great job. Any questions for Rick at all? Okay, Laura, let's move on then to Ebsco Monitoring.
It's really just an information item. You'll see the link there to the most recent reports. We'll continue to track issues if there are any with Ebsco and report on those to the board per the board's request. So happy to report it all looks like research going on Ebsco.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Laura? Okay, we've been with them a long time. That's great to hear. Pdi Work Group, Laura?
This will be brief. The board had endorsed having a work group looking at equity, diversity, inclusion issues and performance and services. So just a few updates on that. The staff over the summer volunteered to work on the 30-day challenge presented by the YWCA of Utah and completed that and reported that it was very thought-provoking. They did appreciate that there were options every day if you had 5 minutes, 15 minutes, or longer, because that's just how the day goes. The second part is I completed a summer-long program from the Public Media Diversity Leaders Initiative and was named a Diversity Fellow through Furman University and the Riley Institute there. It's part of the very first class to complete that program, and then they'll be continuing it in the fall. So really interesting discussions at a national level and understanding strategically how DEI issues affect an organization like ours. So it was really helpful. And then the last part is that there are some of our staff members that have been quite actively involved with a state initiative, part of the One Utah initiative of Governor Cox, and the cabinet level is to have a state version of a 30-day challenge for cabinet level staff members, and then eventually to the staff of the various departments. And we're helping with some multimedia for that effort, participating on a committee, and then also hosting all of the content in Canvas, so it's easy for the people who are going to participate to be able to access and provide that information. That's really information update, unless you have any questions.
Thank you, Laura, and congratulations. That's awesome. It's a very important initiative, and I think there's lots of help from the university as well. Marianne VRL, she's a good help in this area. And I'm sure you're aware of that. Any questions about that at all? Must be Friday. You're all quiet. Okay. All right, and the other, Laura, do you just want to talk about this, about the recent video productions, and or whoever is to speak to that? And I guess what you're wanting us to do is we kind of leave it to the leisure of the board to look at these at a time that's convenient for them. Is that right?
Exactly. There's 3 videos there that are quite brief, and these are they were grant funded, which is a nice thing, and they feature arts organization and science organizations in Utah. And these were pieces that were submitted to be part of the Camp TV series to help kids with school and keeping things, even though they aren't able to do in-person camp, having a virtual camp. So that was a production of WNET in New York. We were able to submit these 3 programs, and I think you'll find them interesting. And our staff is so proud that they were broadcast nationally as part of that series.
Awesome. That's wonderful. We look forward to looking at those. Any questions on those at all? I think you all know how to access them, right? Okay, that gets us down to our last agenda item then, and that's the next meeting. The next meeting will be when? October 8th? Is that what we're looking at 9 o'clock to 11? And of course, we talked about maybe an interim meeting as we work on the budget request for the state. And the doodle poll will be coming out, so you can respond to that and let us know your time. So are we okay on that day, everyone? Okay, hearing none. Any other questions? Any other follow-up items that we should bring up? Lisa? Laura? All right, thank you very much. School starts, I guess it starts Monday for some. And I know for the universities on the 23rd. So it's going to be an interesting year with the COVID-19 Delta variant to see what happens. But we wish you well as you start the school year and hope that it's a successful year. And hopefully we have a dip in the Delta variant like the UK and some other countries have had, and we can get back to normal. That's certainly the way the legislature wants it. And so all the best to you, and thank you for coming to the meeting. And we'll see you sooner and for sure on October 8th at 9 o'clock. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you. Good to see everyone.